Hello, fellow grubs. How's everybody doing? This is Mike. Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a celebration of the films of the year 1951, which happens to be the year that our friend Bob was born. Hi, Bob. Bob up in Canada. And it's also the year that I was born. So what the hell? We are the oldest in the group. What can I tell you? But it was a great year for films. So let's try to get 10 films here, that some of which are a little obscure that maybe you haven't heard about. So let's start off with the letter A. These are in no particular order. I'm just taking them off the top of the stack here. Letter A stands for Another Man's Poison, starring Bette Davis, Gary Merrill, Emlyn Williams, and Anthony Steele. And this was produced by Douglas Fairbanks Jr. It was made in England. Now, Gary Merrill and Bette Davis had become married right after they did All About Eve together in 1950, and they decided to make this film together, and they made some others as well. So this is a very interesting little murder mystery that gives Bette Davis a chance to chew the scenery like no one else can. And it's not a great film. It's probably one of her more obscure movies, but it's definitely worth taking a look at. Another Man's Poison, okay? Also, the letter A. Let's do the Best Picture of 1951. This is a musical called An American in Paris, directed by Vincent Minnelli, starring Gene Kelly and Leslie Caron. And what's famous about this movie is that toward the end of the film, there's this very long ballet sequence with Gene Kelly and Leslie Caron, which is just colorful and beautiful and unbelievably creative. And it's just Vincent Minnelli and Gene Kelly at their absolute creative best. And I can't think of how long the sequence is, but it may be about 9 or 10 minutes long, but it's just absolutely beautiful. The rest of the film is good too, but you sort of find yourself looking forward to the ballet at the end. Yeah, Best Picture of the Year. Here's another musical that's not terribly well known, but Bob talked about this in his video today. He brought up Royal Wedding, starring Fred Astaire, Jane Powell, Peter Lawford, Keenan Wynn, and also an actress named Sarah Churchill, who happened to be the daughter of Winston Churchill. And she was sometimes an actress and sometimes other things, but she made a handful of films. I haven't seen her in anything else except for this. It's an interesting little musical that's not terribly different than all the other MGM musicals that come along. And originally, this was supposed to star Fred Astaire along with June Allyson. Well, June Allyson became pregnant, so she was replaced by Judy Garland. And Judy Garland was not doing well at the time with her health, and she was supposed to be having a nice long rest, but they called her in to do this film, and that did not sit well with Judy, so she started calling in sick. She was taken off the film and subsequently fired from MGM, and she was replaced by Jane Powell. Well, it's not a bad film, but the best thing about it is two numbers. There are two numbers by Fred Astaire, one in which he dances with a hat rack, which is very cool and very creative, and the other one where he dances, as Bob mentioned in his video, he dances in this room which is set up in a way that they were able to actually make the room turn upside down. And so it makes Fred Astaire look as though he's dancing on the walls and then dancing on the ceiling. It's very, very creative. Nothing else has ever been done like it. So that is worth the entire film. Plus, you get to hear Jane Powell sing it if she's your style of singer, which, quite frankly, she's not mine. But she is a very talented lady, so it's nice to see her in film. Here is a low-budget crime thriller called The Hoodlum, starring none other than Dillinger himself, Lawrence Tierney, who became very famous playing that particular real-life criminal and seemed to replay the same role in every film that he did. Very hard-hitting story about a guy who is a career criminal. He is paroled from prison because his elderly mother needs his help and needs him to take care of her. So you would think that anybody with half a brain would want to start a new life and start doing right. Well, not this guy. He starts doing even worse. But it's a very cool movie if you like Lawrence Tierney. He's somebody whose personal life began to look just like his real life, R-E-E-L life. And he started getting in trouble with the law. He started brawling and public drunkenness and all sorts of things. And eventually he just became impossible to work with. But he was kind of at his peak here. So if you like to see Lawrence Tierney, that's a good example of his work. Now here's a movie called Five, which is on this compilation of four horror films. It's supposed to be classic horror. I wouldn't exactly call them all classic. One is called The Mad Magician. One is called The Man Who Turned to Stone. The other is called The Terror of the Tongs with Christopher Lee. I haven't seen any of those movies. I may have seen The Man Who Turned to Stone. I can't remember. But I did see Five. Five is a low-budget movie about the aftermath of nuclear war, where there are 5 people left in the world. One is a pregnant woman, one is a black man, one is a philosopher, one is an explorer. What am I leaving out here? Anyway, so these personalities begin to clash as they all try to survive and stay together in this abandoned house. And it's really a very well done movie. I remember seeing this a lot when I was a kid. I always liked it. Five. Okay, here is a very obscure early film in the career of Marilyn Monroe. Let's Make It Legal, where she plays sort of her trademark character at the time, where she was just a gorgeous, flirtatious blonde who was sort of getting in between couples and causing all kinds of havoc because she was so gorgeous. Claudia Colbert and MacDonald Carey are a married couple who get divorced because she's tired of his gambling habit, and then they go through all this conflict of people trying to get them back together, but of course Marilyn gets in between, and when she gets in between, it's kind of hard to ignore her. So, cool little movie where she has a very small role. Here is a serious film starring Ginger Rogers, Ronald Reagan, Doris Day, Steve Cochran. It's called Storm Warning, and it's all about a model played by Ginger Rogers who is traveling through a small town in the South, and she gets off the train in a small town where her sister, played by Doris Day, happens to live, and she wants to go and visit her. She's never been to where she lives before. And Doris Day is married to Steve Cochran. Well, as I can't remember the name of the character, but Ginger Rogers, as she's walking through town trying to find her sister's house, she witnesses a Ku Klux Klan killing. There's a mob of Ku Klux Klan guys who take a guy out of the local jail, and they beat him up and they end up killing him. Turned out the guy was an undercover reporter who was trying to get the goods on the Klan, and they found out about it, so they wanted to kill him. Well, Ginger Rogers finds out that her sister's husband is part of the Klan, so it gets very very dramatic. Ronald Reagan is his pre-political self. Doris Day does a second note. It's a very good movie, very good movie. Here is a kind of an obscure science fiction film called The Man from Planet X, directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, who directed the classic film Detour. It's a very cool movie starring Robert Clark, Margaret Field, who is Sally Field's mother, and William Schaller, all about a visitor from outer space who is, it's all very strange. It's not a great film, but it's absolutely worth seeing. It's kind of 1951 was kind of the beginning year for a lot of the classic science fiction films that were just all over the place in the 1950s. Now here finally 2 film noirs that I rewatched again, both of which star Robert Mitchum. This is His Kind of Woman, where he co-stars with Jane Russell. It also has Jim Backus, Tim Holt, Vincent Price, who's terrific in it, Marjorie Reynolds, Charles McGraw. Very convoluted story with an interesting backstory about how it was filmed and all that, but directed by John Farrow. It's beautiful to look at, and it's kind of a good companion piece to The Big Sleep, because the film gets so complicated and takes so many directions that it's it's just, you just sort of watch it on the surface and not try to figure it all out. It's probably best that way. Definitely worth seeing. And finally, here is The Racket. Robert Mitchum starring along with Robert Ryan and Elizabeth Scott. William Conrad is also in it. William Tallman. Yeah, William Tallman. Very good remake of an earlier film that was made back in 1928, all about a very honest cop played by Robert Mitchum. Kind of a different angle for him to do, and he's just trying to maneuver justice when he's surrounded by corruption in government. People in the local government and the governor himself, he knows that these people are corrupt, and he's trying to deal with it and do the right thing and remain honest, and he actually manages to do that. So those are my 10 films. I would like to know if any of you have seen these, and I hope everybody's doing well in the lockdown. It's beginning to drive me crazy. Yeah, I'm about to do something really uncharacteristic and just start running down the street screaming, Come out of your homes. Do something. Everybody talk to each other. Nah, I'm being silly. Okay, so thanks a lot for watching, and comments are welcome. Good night.